Hello everyone, my name is Ivo and welcome to Cooking with the Koyas. So why is it that some pizzas come out better than others? Well, today I'd like to share with you my top 4 pizza making tips. Now, there are of course a lot more tips than just 4, so what I'd like to do after you've listened to my 4 tips, I would like you to leave any tips that you would like to add in the description so that of course I can read them and also our viewers. So let's do some tip sharing with today's episode. So having said that, now these tips are not in any order, but I am gonna share 4. So the first one I'd like to share is the type of flour. The type of flour you use, folks, is key. So of course, can you make pizza with all-purpose flour? Absolutely yes. However, if you want a better pizza, and that's what we're talking about, making better pizzas, the 00 flour, folks, is the best flour for pizza making. It's the authentic one that's used in Napoli in Italy, and it is a finer grind of a flour. It has a finer texture than your all-purpose flour. In fact, it's a smooth and silky texture that actually stretches nicely and helps prevent tearing. And yes, it makes for that perfect delicate chew, but yet a nice airy crispy crust. That's the perfect combination when it comes to pizza. And the other thing 00 flour is very good for is high heat resistance. So especially if you have a pizza oven, whether it's a smaller one, a larger one, or a wood burning pizza oven, the 00 flour is more tolerant and more heat resistant than other flours. And lastly, it absorbs water a little differently than other flours, which at the end of the day makes the pizza easier to digest. And I'm gonna come back to that digest word again later. So number 1 tip is the type of flour that you use. The number 2 tip, folks, goes hand in hand with the flour because it's related to the flour, and it's the protein level in your flour. The level of protein in your flour is critical. And what I have found over the years, I've come up with what I found to be, for me, the perfect level of protein when it comes to making pizza, and that is 13.2% to 13.3%. That to me is the ideal level of protein. It's a high level of protein, not too high and not too low. To me, 13.2% or 13.3% is the ideal protein level when it comes to making pizzas. The protein level will allow you to have a stronger dough, more elastic. You can make a thinner dough, prevents tearing. That protein level gives the dough its strength. The other important thing is it gives you a good oven spring. Perfect, a very nice oven spring, which creates for a better, crispier, airier crust. So the higher protein level also allows for better gluten development, which means you have a better dough texture and a much better chew. So protein levels in flour, very, very important. Just look at the label. It'll indicate what the protein level is, or if it doesn't give you a percentage, you could easily figure it out. So for example, if it says protein and then it has a 13, and then you look at the sample size and it's 100, 13 divided by 100, you get your 13%. So it's very easy to calculate. So tip number 2, very important, protein levels. So how do you achieve the perfect protein level that I mentioned? Well, if your flour it does not have, if it is too low in protein, you can easily bring the protein level up by adding vital wheat gluten. Yes, you can add vital wheat gluten to your flour and raise the level of protein up. And I did a video on that. I'll put a link in the description for you because it'll share with you the exact formula and let you know exactly how much vital wheat gluten to add depending on what your flour level is and where you want to get it to. So I'll put a link in the description for you there. Tip number 3 for me is hydration. Now, the hydration is the amount of water that you add to your flour. So if you have 100 grams of flour and you have 60 grams of water, that's 60% hydration. And what I have found is that a 64.5% hydration is perfect for those pizzas that you're going to make on a stone or on a pizza peel. But if you're going to make pizza in a pan, then what I found is a 70% hydration level is more ideal and better suited for pan pizza. So let's talk about those two. Hydration is actually a critical factor that influences the texture and the final chew of your pizza dough. The proper hydration will lead to a softer, airier dough with that perfect chew. You have that nice open crumb with those large air pockets. And the water level is essential for your gluten development as well. And it also contributes to a very good oven spring. Now, for the pan pizzas at 70%, that larger hydration level actually helps prevent the pizza from drying out, because typically you make pan pizzas at lower temperatures and you cook them for longer periods of time. It also helps produce a, let's say, fluffier, more tender pizza, which is typical what you find in a pan pizza. It's the hydration level that contributes to that. So the higher hydration makes for a better typical pan pizza. You know, having a nice open crumb and coming almost focaccia-like. So the fourth tip I'd like to share with you is yet another very, very important tip when it comes to pizza making, and that is fermentation time of your dough. Yes, if you want to make a pizza dough and you need a pizza in 2 hours, 3 hours, you make a same day dough, you're good to go, you'll make a good pizza. However, if you let that dough, if your recipe allows for an overnight fermentation of your pizza dough, you will have a better pizza dough. And that's what we're talking about, sharing these tips. We want to make that better overall pizza. And a few things that the long fermentation does, but one thing it does is enhanced flavor of your dough. Because the yeast has time to break down the sugars and the starches, it has time to do its work and develop that flavor slowly, let's say on an overnight, as an example, fermentation. And in doing so, it will produce a more complex and delicious, flavorful pizza dough and crust. So you'll have a lighter, more airier crust as it allows the yeast to develop naturally over time. And the other important thing that it does is no yeasty taste in your pizza dough. By letting it go overnight, you allow the yeast to work and it's rid of that yeasty taste in your dough. And in fact, it has the opposite effect in creating more complex flavors as opposed to a yeasty flavor. The gluten also has time to become more relaxed. And again, going back to handability, it makes your dough easier to handle. But for me, probably the biggest thing that a long fermentation does as compared to, let's say, a same day pizza dough is digestibility. It is way easier to digest this dough that has fermented overnight than it is a same day pizza dough. In fact, when you eat a pizza that has made with a dough that's had a chance to work overnight and ferment overnight, you won't feel bloated. You won't feel that full bloated feeling. And again, you will digest that pizza much, much easier than you will with the same day pizza. So you'll have none of that bloated feeling. And in fact, for those of you who are not gluten intolerant, but let's say you're a little gluten sensitive, if you have a pizza that's been made with a dough fermented overnight, it'll be more palatable for you than one that was made same day. So folks, those are my top 4 pizza making tips, and I am looking forward to reading the tips that you leave as well, because I know there are a lot more tips out there that can be shared. And you know what? Sharing tips with each other, with people, with our viewers, our subscribers, what a beautiful thing to do, helping people make a better pizza. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So in fact, if you haven't made a pizza lately, I'll put a link in the description to one of my prior episodes, and hopefully you'll give that recipe a try. But wherever you're tuning in from, I want to thank you ever so much for joining me on today's episode of Cooking with the Koyas. And as always, folks, until next time, buon appetito and happy pizza making.